In a turn of events, Elon Musk announcing Tesla will no longer accept Bitcoin payments, citing concerns around Bitcoin mining and environmental concerns. Bitcoin dropping sharply since Musk's tweet last night, trading under $50,000 right now.
Hey guys, it's Kesh, and welcome to the Future Economy. In this video, we're going to look at one fundamental problem: how much energy is actually coming from fossil fuels when it comes to Bitcoin mining. If you reason about this from first principles, it's not too hard to conclude that Bitcoin still has a large portion of its energy coming from fossil fuels. And there's no way to prove how all of the energy for the entire network is being generated, because you'll have a lot of vested interests in mining, and they also have a large portion of their net worth inside of Bitcoin. So when you have $1 trillion asset, obviously there's going to be articles that are saying, you know, Bitcoin is mostly powered by renewable energy, and then you'll have other articles that are saying Bitcoin is powered by fossil fuels. So which one is true? In this day and age, you have fake news everywhere. So we're going to get to the bottom of this using first principles. So there's 3 articles that Elon linked for his reasons on why he thinks Bitcoin is very dependent on fossil fuels. And let's take a look at those articles. So this article from Fortune that says how much Bitcoin comes from dirty coal, mine in China just spotlighted the issue. And this one event is a pretty good way of gauging how much of the Bitcoin network is actually sustained by a fossil fuel plant. So on the weekend of April 17 and 18, 1/3 of all of Bitcoin's global computing power was out. And that's because a coal mine in China was flooded. Obviously, correlation is not reason for causation, but if we dig deeper into this article, they say how on April 11th, there were 21 workers that were trapped underground in the mine, and the miners were rescued, but over the following weekend, authorities reportedly halted production while conducting a safety check, stopping shipments to power plants and causing a blackout. If the coal plant shuts down, and that's the only source of power for the Bitcoin miners, then you can logically assume that the Bitcoin miners are now effectively shut down. And that caused a 30% drop in the computing power for Bitcoin's network. This is a more solid piece of evidence than all the other articles that say, you know, Bitcoin's power comes mostly from renewable energy, or Bitcoin is powered by, you know, whatever XYZ source. But how do you prove that, right? That's the problem. How do you prove that most of, or even 60-70% of Bitcoin's network is sustained by renewable energy? It's very hard to prove because there's no restrictions on who can join the network and who can, you know, expand on it. If I wanted to, I could just create a new company, move to somewhere that's where electricity is cheap, and then just start a facility to mine Bitcoin. There's no there's no barriers to entry. Because the entire network was affected by this one event, we can clearly see how this could be correlated to the coal plant shutting down. The Ars Technica article says a few Bitcoin projects illustrate the cryptocurrency's enormous climate impact better than the Greenwich power plant in upstate New York. The once abandoned power plant was bought by a private equity firm, Atlas Holdings, and then it was converted into a natural gas plant, and they used that entire plant to generate electricity for Bitcoin mining. So you have institutional investors that are now getting into the Bitcoin mining game, and they're buying up an entire power plant just to generate electricity for Bitcoin. And just to prove how profitable this business is, from February 2020 to February 2021, the company mined nearly 1,186 Bitcoin at a cost of $2,869 per Bitcoin. One Bitcoin today is about $50,000. So if you have institutional investors that are getting this kind of return on their investment, then they will be pouring money into this like, you know, they're just going to be pouring gasoline onto this fire as fast as they can, because all they care about is their short-term gains and screw everything else. They don't really care about long-term, right? So every single private equity firm is going to be looking into doing this. And in fact, at the end of this Ars Technica article, they say in the company's SEC filings, Greenidge says it will use its expertise developed at its current power plant to expand to at least 500 megawatt hours of mining capacity by 2025. So they even plan to expand this further than they already have. Okay, so we have two events so far that we can look at in real life that has a connection to how Bitcoin's mining operations are powered. One of the things that we need to really dive into is how Bitcoin miners make a profit. So we're gonna come up with a hypothetical situation just to illustrate the point. So if you have a coal-powered plant and you spend, let's say, $10,000 on the fuel to power your entire operation, and you're mining Bitcoin and you get, let's say, 2 Bitcoin per month, and the energy usage for that, it costs you $10,000, then those 2 Bitcoins are worth $100,000. So you made a ton of profit on that, right? So all of these miners are also invested in having the price go up as much as possible, because as the price of Bitcoin goes up, they have more and more profit. The point is that you have, when the price of Bitcoin gets so high, it doesn't make sense for these venture capitalists to come in and build solar farms, because they already have abandoned fossil fuel plants that they can buy and repurpose, because that'll get them online much faster. The other thing is that there's an unpriced externality, which is like generating carbon and emitting CO2 has no tax whatsoever, right? Like you can't just take a public resource, pollute it, and then not pay any sort of tax for that. And that's why Elon is also advocating for a carbon tax.
I mean, my top recommendation, honestly, would be just to have a carbon tax. Like, the economy works great. Like, prices and money are just information. Prices are information. If the price is wrong, the economy doesn't do the right thing. So we got basically an unpriced externality in the carbon concentration in the oceans and atmosphere. Like it's kind of like not paying, like if you're not paying for garbage removal or something. Like, okay, everyone's going to throw garbage in the street. It's right. Like garbage removal is free. But it's like there's a little bit of like, okay, garbage removal isn't free. You've got to pay a little bit for this. And because we're not paying for the CO2 capacity of the oceans and atmosphere, we have what in economics is called an unpriced externality. So the market is unable to respond to an unpriced externality. If we just put a price on it, the market will react in a sensible way. But because we don't have a price on it, it's behaving badly. I talked to the Biden administration, incoming administration, and they were like, well, this seems too politically difficult. And I was like, well, but this is obviously a thing that should happen. And by the way, SpaceX would be paying a carbon tax too. Sure. So I'm like, I think we should pay it too. It's not like we shouldn't have carbon generating things. It just should be a price on this stuff.
So he's not saying that Bitcoin is a bad a bad thing. He's also, Tesla still has $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin on their balance sheet. They're not getting rid of it. They're not selling it. They're just not accepting new payments. This might be another way of trying to put a spotlight on a carbon tax, because ultimately Elon has been talking about this for years. And how this carbon tax would affect Bitcoin specifically is that now that if, let's say, you're trying to start a coal power plant again, right, in a world where there is a carbon tax, the floor for your operation just got raised a lot higher, because now not only does it cost you to pay for your coal and your equipment, but you also have to pay a tax on top of that, which shrinks your profit, right? So if your Bitcoin is worth 50,000 and your coal and everything ends up costing 40,000 with tax, your profits start shrinking, and that kind of business is no longer viable. So naturally everyone will start shifting to renewable energy. And it's just an obvious economic choice. It's not like a political thing, right? Like it just becomes obvious that like if I want to maximize profits, I'm going to use the cheapest source of energy, and I'm going to generate more profit that way. So far, we have two events that are linked to fossil fuel industry being involved in Bitcoin. And we don't know exactly how large of a percentage the fossil fuel industry is within the Bitcoin network. But we do know that once the coal plant shut down in China, 30% of the network went out. So that's one metric we have to gauge how much of the entire network is being powered by fossil fuels. Another one is the power plant that we have in upstate New York. It's a proof of concept, right? And if one company is able to prove that you can do this, then many more people will be lined up to do the same thing. Once you can prove that it works with one plant, you just pour money in and scale it up, and you'll have much more profit. It makes sense for Tesla not to promote Bitcoin, especially when their entire mission and ethos is built on, transitioning us to a sustainable energy future. So as long as there is no carbon tax, then there will be people that are just going to use the cheapest form of readily available fuel. I try to take a neutral stance on this because I am long Bitcoin and I am long Tesla. So I don't want to, jump to conclusions, but I think that the way that he's approaching this problem makes sense because a lot of times he kind of just approaches everything from first principles. But if you guys know of any better sources to find out how much energy is actually being used by the Bitcoin network and what portion of that energy is used by renewable sources, then let me know. I'd love to have more information about this because, I want to be able to reason through this with first principles, and I think you should too. I think we need a lot more independent thinkers in the world. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.